During the all-out war between heroes and villains, All For One had taken a rewind serum that was reverse engineered by Dr. Ujiko from the quirk Deleter round created by Overhaul from Ares' quirk. After being forced to take the rewind serum by being defeated at the hands of Endeavor, his body began to rewind back to his prime, showing us once and for all what All For One really looks like under his mask and disfigured face caused by All Might. Though All For One is now back in his prime and stronger than ever, there is one drawback to using the rewind serum, as his body will be continuously rewinding until he rewinds to nothing, similar to what had happened to Ares' dad when she touched him, meaning that All For One was now on a time limit. With this time limit now set in motion, he attempts to make his way towards Shigaraki, who is now fighting against Izuku Midoriya. Thanks to many heroes getting in his way, All For One has now become a teen who is a lot more emotional and filled with hatred than when he was an adult, due to Shigaraki's hatred affecting him from their shared connection. All Might sees this as an opportunity to enter the battlefield to face All For One for the final time, knowing that given their past together and All For One's current state, that he couldn't be able to ignore him. All Might interfering would allow All Might to buy crucial time for Izuku to defeat Shigaraki alone without the added stress of All For One joining in the fight to assist Shigaraki. And so begins the ultimate confrontation between hero and villain. Though quirkless, All Might doesn't arrive empty-handed, as he is shown to be holding a briefcase as well as joined by his car Hercules. The briefcase and Hercules end up forming a whole powered suit, with Hercules acting as All Might's support item, thus giving us the debut of Armored All Might, as well as his iconic "I am here" catchphrase. This emotional scene not only had fans hyped up to finally get to see All Might have a heroic return without taking any shine away from Deku, but we see that All Might is taking Sir Night-Eye's foresight of his death head on and facing fate on his own terms, similar to Deku during his fight with Overhaul. The suit itself is a massive Easter egg to Marvel's Iron Man, as the briefcase and suit was actually inspired by Iron Man's Mark V suit as seen in Iron Man 2, where Tony Stark is seen carrying a briefcase around that would later be used to transform itself into a full-body Iron Man suit around Tony Stark. For those that don't know, Horikoshi is a massive fan of Marvel, and around the time the suit first began to form around All Might in chapter 386, Horikoshi had stated that the Mark V was his favorite Iron Man suit. With the suit fully formed around his body, we see that the suit not only takes inspiration from Marvel, but DC as well. The suit sports a power source like arc reactor in the center of the chest, similar to the many Iron Man armors, but as well as an open mouth cowl, similar to Batman in the way that the suit itself is black, and we are able to visibly see All Might smile. The open mouth cowl also acts as a callback to All Might roasting Deku for having a smiling mouth guard to mimic the signature No Fear All Might smile, which makes sense that All Might wouldn't have his mouth protected, as it would take away from his origin and homage to his master and former One For All user Nana Shimura. And speaking of All Might's former master, the color scheme of the suit itself is a huge reference to Nana Shimura, with the suit's colors being black, gold, and white, resembling the colors of Nana Shimura's costume. The suit even acts as a reference to All Might himself, as the suit contains two iron tufts on his head, resembling All Might's signature two tufts of hair. As the fight is about to begin, All Might tells Hercules to begin recording so that he can keep Tsukauchi updated on the fight. Aiba, aka La Brava, overhearing this and seeing that All Might is about to fight All For One, begins to live stream the fight for the world to see. One of the officers in the background wonders if streaming everything was her bankai, a bankai being a reference to one of Shonen Jump's original big three mangas, that being Bleach. While La Brava was excited by the fight, Tsukauchi on the other hand felt nothing but pain, as he was potentially going to see his now quirkless friend get brutally ended while the world watched, as in a world full of superpowered beings, a quirkless individual would have no chance at stopping someone like All For One, which this bit of dialogue not only references how the world of My Hero Academia views quirkless individuals wanting to become heroes, taking on super villains, like how we see the recreation of Deku asking All Might if he could be a hero like him in the beginning of the series, now with a younger All Might in his place, to show that yes, quirkless individuals could be heroes, but the entire fight itself acts as a meta reference to the original My Hero Academia story and the criticisms brought on by fans and the editors of the the My Hero Academia team on Horikoshi's original plot for the series. To keep things short, originally My Hero Academia was going to follow a completely quirkless Izuku Midoriya, meaning that at no point in the series was Deku going to be receiving a quirk. Horikoshi's editors at the time had told him that the story would be better off if the main protagonist had his superpower, with most of the fandom later agreeing that the story had benefited with Deku having one for all, as many would feel that the fights would have been dull, boring, and pointless against villains with superpowers. Armored All Might versus All For One acts as Horikoshi's way of proving that his original concept would have been just as entertaining and action-packed. Continuing on, the fight finally begins as an enraged All For One sends a powerful shockwave towards All Might, proving him right that All For One wouldn't be able to ignore him. Though All For One knows All Might's true goal is to just stall time for Deku, All Might quickly charges towards the blast, telling Hercules to activate Red. Hercules is essentially the Jarvis of the My Hero Academia universe, with the Hercules AI giving All Might updates on his suit's conditions and sending out attacks that All Might calls out for, such as Red, where parts of Hercules forms a barrier in front of All Might, protecting him from incoming attacks. The move itself is a reference to Red Riot, aka Kirishima, whose quirk allows him to harden his body, essentially turning him into a walking tank. The shockwave completely shatters Red, lowering Hercules' shields by 66%. All Might, unfazed by the news, continues charging towards All For One, smiling. After sending out such a powerful attack, All For One's right arm is completely destroyed, but begins to regenerate. As All For One charges at All Might calls out for Black Whip, where we see little drones and his forearms shoot out chain-like cables, impaling All For One. As soon as All For One is impaled by them, he immediately calls out for Charge Bolt, electrifying the Black Whip cables. Both of All Might's attacks are references to different heroes and their quirks, Black Whip being a reference to the 5th user of One For All, Lariat, aka Daigoro Banjo, and his quirk Black Whip, as well as Deku, and the second hero being Charge Bolt, aka Kaminari, whose powers are based on electricity. The electric current shooting into All For One ends up slowing down his regeneration, and All Might relentlessly continues his attacks, reeling All For One in with Cellophane, named after Sero's quirk, and then calling out for Build-Up, which has Hercules send out a reinforced boot for his leg. Build-Up being a reference to potentially Fa Jin, the 3rd user of One For All's quirk. Once the reinforced boot attaches to his leg, he yells out Sugar Man, referencing Sato's quirk that allows him to get stronger for every gram of sugar he intakes. The boot attaching to All Might, giving him that Sugar Man-esque boost of strength. As All Might gets closer to All For One, he begins to taunt him on how his approach to this fight by trying to wear him down with ranged attacks only works on those with quirks and won't work on him. Tsukauchi witnessing All Might defy the odds, we get a cameo appearance from Melissa Shield from the Two Heroes movie, learning where and how All Might got his armored suit. All Might hits All For One with a shoot style smash, referencing Deku's fighting style, while smiling, claiming that not once in his entire life had he gone into a battle expecting to lose. As he continuously hits All For One with shoot style, he begins to taunt him, stating that a real demon lord would be aghast getting whooped by a quirkless man, a ploy to keep All For One fixated solely on him. Hearing this, All For One, enraged, fires off a blast of a fusion of different quirks that sends All Might flying through buildings. This automatically activates All Might's utility cape, Auto Guard Dark Shadow, protecting him from heavy damage. The utility cape is a heavy reference to Tokoyami's quirk Dark Shadow, as the cape even has similar eyes to Dark Shadow and even functions similar to Tokoyami's Black Abyss. Sadly, the cape is destroyed along with pieces of his suit, but luckily All Might's armored suit also contains some sort of nanotech, where it can repair damaged sections of the suit, similar to Iron Man's nano suit, where the nanotech would repair damaged sections of the suit, making them brand new while leaving certain parts of his body unprotected. All For One tells All Might the trash bag he's wearing made him lose all perspective, and that his gadgets can go beyond their limits. Knowing this, All Might acknowledges how he had seen many heroes unable to wield their power after losing their items, so he can't rely on his gadgets. The fight continues as All Might punches All For One in the face, but All For One tanks the punch and tells All Might that he didn't fall for his trick to stall him, while blasting off another shockwave at close range, hitting All Might, making him laugh as Hercules launches out Pinky, a super acid injection section referencing Mina that All Might stabs into All For One's gut, dissolving him from the inside. But All Might is then sent flying, crashing through Tatooine Station, the same exact station from chapter 1 where Deku watched Kamui Woods and Mount Lady take down the giant villain. Amongst the destruction, we even see that nearby the station there is a Yoritomi Midori restaurant, which happens to be the same restaurant chain Hawks and Endeavor went to before fighting the high-end Nomu back in Kyushu. When All Might crash lands on a building, the suit updates All Might on his physical conditions, reading that he has fractured ribs, full body contusions, and his respiratory system malfunctioning. After hearing this, All Might notices that right across from him was the same rooftop him and Deku once stood upon back in chapter 1, where Deku first asked if he could become a hero just like him. This callback to chapter 1 just hits extremely hard, as All Might is not only doing what he told Deku was impossible in becoming a hero without a quirk, but we see All Might finally fully embracing his origins and how, just like Deku, he too was a quirkless kid brimming with youth who wanted nothing more than to become a hero who would bring peace to the world. Throughout the series, All Might has gone through a lot of inner turmoil on how powerless and useless he felt after losing One For All in the Battle of Kamino. In turn, this made him spiral down into feeling distant from heroes and heroism itself, becoming a shell of his former self. And constantly throughout the fight, we see All Might having flashbacks to when he first met Nana Shimura, prior to receiving One For All, where similar to Deku, we see him following Nana Shimura, wanting to assist her and wanting to step up to change the world so that people won't have to live in fear regardless of him not having a quirk, thus becoming a symbol of peace. It's within these flashbacks that proves that All Might was always a hero in service of others without the need of One For All, as One For All isn't what made him a true hero, but it was his ambitions and call to action that made him one, which also made him a worthy successor for One For All in the first place, bringing All Might's arc in My Hero Academia full circle and becoming the hero he always had been without One For All, thus bringing back the light in his eyes that was once dark in his quirkless state. Continuing on, Armored All Might notices All For One becoming younger and does his iconic laugh as Hercules sends out a few more items that attaches to All Might's suit. He then activates his thrusters, Uravity, and Ingenium to full throttle, referencing both Ochako and Ida. All Might and Deku are then shown to be able to sense each other during their respective fights due to their shared connection with One For All. Here, All Might goes full mobility with his new attachments, as we see him use Tentacle plus Froppy suction pads to boost his speed and make tighter turns while moving in between buildings. Horikoshi's love for Marvel shines through once again, as the Tentacle attachment not only references both Tsuyu and Shoji, but the attachment is designed after the iconic Marvel Spider-Man villain Dr. Octopus and his mechanical arms. Besides that, he also gains a Tailman and Shoto attachment plus a Anima drone, which all reference Ojiro, Todoroki, and Koda respectively. Attempting to lead All For One into a trap, Anima goes off to find a power source as All For One gets ahead of All Might, shooting his black tendrils through the two buildings into the alley, stating that he doesn't need to waste excess power to defeat him. Armored All Might swiftly dodges all of the tendrils and flies into the sky to be met by two giant quirk monsters conjured up by All For One and his black tendrils. Seeing this, All Might calls All For One a liar, with All For One responding saying that he truly is conserving his power. All Might quickly flies down to the buildings, escaping the two quirk monsters, but All For One releases them for more tendrils and ends up destroying one of the tentacle arms and mocking All Might for no longer smiling. Distracted by the tendrils, All Might looks back as All For One bursts through the side of the building, delivering a powerful blow to All Might's side, punching him into the ground, breaking his legs. Tailman quickly wraps itself around All For One as All Might turns, shoving Shoto into All For One's mouth, shooting flames into him as Anima is seen overhead, receiving the power needed from a nearby power substation to unleash Can't Stop Twinkling. In reference to Aoyama, Can't Stop Twinkling shoots a laser down onto both All Might and All For One. Thankfully, due to All Might's quick thinking, he ejected the tentacle parts and had his armor coated with a special optic resin called Invisible Girl, referencing Toru, making him able to zip slip away in time before the laser was able to hit him, as well as be shielded from it. Being inspired by Stars and Stripes and her battle against Shigaraki, in order to keep All For One in the strike zone, instead of turning the laser into solid matter like she did, he decided to hit All For One with Earphone Jack, a repeated sound wave vibration attack that comes from his chest, mimicking Jiro's quirk. As more black tendrils come out and hit All Might, he begins to morph his armor in a move called Creati, mimicking the quirk of Yaoyorozu, in order to create grape juice, these binding rounds that functions similar to Minetta's sticky balls, and throws them at All For One to keep him from rising and escaping the laser. Unfortunately, Can't Stop Twinkling has reached its limit and explodes in mid-air, leaving All For One to rise from the strike zone, glowing and looking even much younger than before. An appendage begins to morph out of All For One's back as he states that tools can't surpass their own limits, and asking if All Might is forgetting to smile. Suddenly, All For One freezes up and is unable to move, and that's when we see Stain flying in on his glider, a neat reference to Marvel villain Green Goblin licking a piece of rubble containing All For One's blood. With both All Might and Stain now heading towards an immobilized All For One, they look at each other, coming to an understanding that Stain came to his aid because All Might must live. All For One then uses an ability that hasn't been seen since Camino, called Force Quirk Activation, and forcibly activates a quirk called Bloodlet, which allows him to expel his own blood from his body. In anticipation for Stain's arrival, he made sure to keep this quirk in his reserves, along with an antigen swap quirk, which gives him the ability to overwrite his own blood type, making Stain's quirk useless against him. With All For One now able to move again, the appendage on his back grows teeth and bites onto Stain's body, separating him from his glider, sending him flying through buildings, with All For One following close behind and All Might chasing after them. Stain crash lands in an arcade as All For One states that he will now be taking his quirk Blood Curdle, and how Stain made valuable contributions to the growth of the League and by extension Shigaraki, but his role had ended there. As All Might tries to catch up, Stain states that his role didn't end and that it was all a part of the process. He then proceeds to smile, wanting All Might to live on and triumph, but is cut off due to All For One finishing the job and stealing his quirk. In the second of All Might's arrival, All For One quickly turns as the center of his palm glows, charging up a blast. Surprisingly, Hercules was able to produce one final shield from whatever was left over in an attempt to protect All Might from the incoming beam. Hercules tells All Might that he must live on, but is cut off as All For One shoots off the beam straight at All Might, destroying Hercules as well as the majority of All Might's armored suit. In another realm, we see All Might laid out, beaten, with his former master Nana Shimura telling him that the tale is still being written, encouraging him to keep going. All Might sees his master and believes that he is just hallucinating and that this is just him giving himself a pep talk. Then Sir Night-Eye makes a quick appearance, standing over him, telling him, "Your support items, your legs, all you've been given, all rendered useless. You can fight no longer. However, you are not dead yet." Back to reality, All Might begins to crawl and states to All For One, "Do your worst." All while in the background we see the clashing between Deku and Shigaraki, with All For One finally in range to use his Gloop War, proving that this whole time, despite All Might's efforts to stall him, All For One made sure to lead the fight in the direction of Shigaraki. In a failed attempt to use Gloop Warp on Shigaraki, All For One decides to grab All Might by the leg and fly the rest of the way to Deku and Shigaraki's fight. Deku and Shigaraki see this, and Deku is given an ultimatum by Shigaraki: stay to fight him or go save All Might, while in the meantime he goes off to finish Best Jeanist and the other heroes at UA. Hey, props to Shigaraki for at least being patient enough to let Deku save All Might. That's true character development right there. Izuku, seeing All Might in the distance, all beat up, thinks back to the time that they decided to change All Might's fate, back in chapter 131. Izuku begins to fight off his tears as we see the All Might vestige within One For All beginning to take a more physical form, signaling the death of All Might. In a last-ditch effort to not abandon his dream of being the symbol of peace, All Might swings his body upwards, wrapping his left arm that contains the only remaining piece of armor still intact around All For One's neck in order to self-destruct, in hopes of turning All For One into a kindergartner, with this being his final attempt at stopping All For One, All Might thinks back to his past. Here we see All Might as a child with his mother reading the first Anpanman hardcover picture book by Takashi Yanase that was released back in 1976, Anpanman being a fictional superhero. The scene itself parallels baby Deku back in chapter 1 of the series, as Deku had a similar experience with his mother watching videos of All Might. A beautiful parallel showing fantasy becoming reality. Now these lines stating "why was I made" and "what am I here to do" are actually lyrics from Anpanman no March. Anpanman's theme being here has a deeper meaning as it reflects All Might's character heavily in the way that the song goes on about old scars still hurting, living in the present with a smile on your face, and protecting the dreams of others. All things that we see All Might go through in his journey throughout the series. While reflecting on his past, he looks back and realizes that he truly did make a significant impact, as what he saw marks the end of his era and the beginning of a brand new one. But unfortunately, All Might's reflection is cut short as his plan to blow himself and All For One up fails when All For One shoots spikes into All Might's arm, destroying the armor, preventing it from exploding. All For One mocks All Might for believing that he could choose how he would leave this world. He then uses Stain's quirk to freeze All Might in place, and All Might's terrified expression gave All For One great pleasure to finally see him at his lowest. As Gentle and Star and Stripes fighter crew attempts to intervene in the death of All Might, All For One swiftly foils their attempts to stop him. With the world watching, All For One lifts All Might in the air and begins to rip All Might in half. Deku looks on in horror as he, along with the rest of the world, was about to witness the gruesome end of an era. Then suddenly, from on top of UA, Bakugo, having returned from the dead, looks down at Deku, and we see that the new era All Might saw begun with Deku and Bakugo. Without a single word being said to each other, Deku spins around with his hand out as Bakugo blasts off towards him. Deku catches Bakugo by the hand as Bakugo continues to shoot off explosions, spinning to gain momentum, while Deku uses the second quirk Gear Shift on Bakugo to further increase his speed. With the combination of both explosion and Gear Shift, Bakugo is launched off into the direction of All Might. Shigaraki tells Deku that he knows they won't make it in time to save All Might because All Might's vestige is beginning to look solid, telling Deku that the man showed the world a dream, and with his death, the dream is over. Back to harsh reality, leaving Deku to stare off into the distance at All Might. The words of Sir Night-Eye from chapter 161 about the energy of striving for a certain future when one doesn't have doubts being centered on Deku was the result of Deku's fate being changed can all be heard as Bakugo makes his way towards All Might, as we see people from all over the world praying and wishing for All Might to be rescued. Thinking back to when Bakugo stated that he was the one who put an end to All Might back in chapter 118, with full determination, Bakugo blows off All For One's arms, saving All Might, shouting, "It's time to win this." With All Might finally saved, Sir Night-Eye once again returns to talk to All Might in the other realm, where Sir Night-Eye confirms that this was supposed to be the gruesome death he foreshadowed. However, he managed to keep his promise to Deku. All Might, with a smile, says that everyone knows the old master is meant to die after passing on the torch. Sir Night-Eye calls All Might by his real name, Toshinori Yagi, and states that you've read too many comic books. You are a hero, but you're also human. You can't possibly die so readily. A cheeky little jab at those who think characters dying makes for great character development, and All Might's gruesome fate having officially been changed, subverting expectations on a played out comic book trope. Back to reality, Bakugo and All Might land on top of a building where we see Maharu and Katsuma from the Heroes Rising movie make a cameo appearance cheering on Bakugo from the island. Bakugo wonders if the glowing child was All For One, and All Might confirms that it is. Seeing Bakugo's broken arm, All Might tells him to get closer, grabbing Bakugo's hand to hand over his broken armored gauntlet. All Might says this won't do its original job anymore, but it can still serve as a brace. Great explosion murder gone dynamite, showing that the gauntlet was a reference to Bakugo as the gauntlet morphs around Bakugo's Bakugo's arm. Hearing All Might call him Dynamite makes Bakugo smile, marking the end of the Armored All Might versus All for One fight. Now this was truly one of the best fights in My Hero Academia so far. It wraps up All Might's character development and journey by bringing everything full circle so beautifully. Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Armored All Might versus All for One fight in the comment section down below. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed the breakdown of all the Easter eggs and references in the fight, as well as subscribe to the channel if you're new for more My Hero Academia videos and breakdowns like this. With that said, I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.